Okay, here we are. Good evening. This is Bob from Love Beyond the Sea, technically Love Beyond the Sea, American Filipina style. This whole screen setup looks different than what I'm used to since I haven't done a live stream for a while, and I trust it wasn't going to start at 6:30 like it was set up, so I just hit the start button here. And thank you for joining here. It's been a while since I did one. In fact, this whole you know experience of wanting to help foreigners find a wife in the Philippines is kind of dried up a bit here because we've had COVID for the last 2 years. We just lost the two people that were there, so I don't know how that goes. So anyway, COVID has kind of made it a deal where people aren't able to go to the Philippines. They probably lost some interest in going to the Philippines and looking for a wife, perhaps going somewhere else. And I advise looking for a wife wherever you can. I have experience with a Filipina woman from the Philippines that I married very quickly in 2015. That's what the basis of all these videos is our quick marriage. Older foreigner, not that old. That was 6+ years ago. Meeting a Filipina, getting married in less than 8 weeks. She comes to America 8 months later to be with him, and we've been married for 6 years and 8 months. And I've accumulated. Thank you for the thumbs up. I do appreciate that. During that time, I've accumulated a lot of experience, and without throwing either one of us under the bus, I want to share what we've learned to other people. I come from a biblical perspective as a Christian, so some of the things I say will definitely be unappealing and distasteful to some, and to others. I've heard that it's a breath of fresh air to have somebody talk about the legitimacy of a Westerner Filipino relationship, and that it's biblical, it's approved by God, it's not unwise. Yeah, it's more challenging because of the distance, and there is the culture. Al, thanks for being here today. I do appreciate that. And yeah, it caught me by surprise. I wanted to do it a day or two ago, but as we'll talk more about, when you're planning a trip to the Philippines right now, which is what we want to talk about, you're going to go through a lot of things. When I first, and I hope people will watch this later, I don't know how long it's going to be, but when I've been to the Philippines, I think we went 15, I went in 15, then we went 16, 18, and I know we went in 20. So this might be my fifth trip. And all we had to do for the other trips was go to the travel agent, work out the details, bring home, the printouts, book the flights, pay for it, give her the passport information and all that. And that's it. It's not that way now. And if you've spent considerable time like I have looking at different people's posts or channels like Jennifer Terry, Flogger Grandpa, I like those. Rike has been now making these travel videos all about the Philippines. I think there's going to hopefully be a revival for us Philippines vloggers to get more traction and interaction nowadays. But there's you'll read in the comment sections, which I encourage you to do, that there's a lot of confusion. There's a lot of angst. There's a lot of people saying, I'm just not going to go. Too much wrong. All these changes and opening up and clarifications, for many, it just seems to get more confusing. I'm just waiting for more people to show up here tonight. And then I'll talk about the things that have been confusing to me, and I don't want them to be confusing to you. So, Al, I'm glad you're here. I hope others will join in. I found out something just today. In fact, I think for the last this is Wednesday, that'd be about the last 9 or 10 days maybe, that it seems like I want to get out of this chair and go do something, and then I'll read something online and think, well, that's not the way I interpreted it, or that's not what somebody else said. and then you make all your notes, and then something else changes, and you get clarification. Sometimes it's good, sometimes maybe it's still a little vague. And that happened today because with travel insurance. Some people are having difficulty getting travel insurance because of their age or from, Canada. If anybody here, while we're doing this live or later on, is coming from Canada and knows where to get the $35,000 health part of your travel expense for your travel insurance, I'd like to know where you're getting it. Some countries, not as easy to get out of with the insurance, citing danger in the Philippines, but here in America, you can get your insurance, I think, relatively easy, and it's no less dangerous for Americans than it is for Canadians. So I'm just going to get started here and run through my itinerary, and because not everybody can just fly from LAX to Manila, Philippines, and meet a Filipino over there. I mean, wouldn't that be great? Just one flight, and really, when to time your RT-PSR. That's good. There's still things to know, but there is some confusion has been about when you're taking multiple flights just to get to a port of departure, which for many of us is LAX, but we don't exactly live near there. So we have to make some other flights just to get there. And we'll talk about how that affects your flight. I know there's only Al here right now, but anybody just drop in some comments. We're going to start. We're going to be leaving in the middle of March for sure. We were going to go last December, and then it changed to March. Then it changed to December of this year. Then my wife couldn't get the time off, so we went back to March. We're trying to go to a wedding, which I am really looking forward to. I get to be in the wedding party, wear a barong again. Excuse me, I'll probably have to give a speech, which is fine. I did talk at one of her relatives' brother's wedding, one of the last times we were there. And, I'm all for marriage, so I don't mind talking about that. So what we'll have to do, we'll leave from Omaha, Nebraska. Now, that's a 1 hour and 19 flight to Denver. And before you start any international flight, I think they usually tell you to get there 3 hours early. Omaha is not LAX, it's not Manila, so we probably could make that 2.5 hours. Okay, because we'll have, I'll tell you what, we've got 4 luggages. On these international flights, you get 2 big luggages, carry on, and what's the other one called? Personal item. That's on international flights, 2, 1 and 1. Domestic, you only get the 1 bag, otherwise luggage, big one, 50 pounds. Otherwise, you got to pay extra, I guess, which could be quite expensive. So we've got 2 full luggages, 50 pounds. My wife bought a device you can buy, I don't know where she got it, where you hook it onto your suitcase. One person lifts it up and the other can kind of see what it weighs. It's got to be 50 pounds or less. So we've checked those many times as she keeps reshuffling items. We got 50 pounds in 3 of them, and one of them like 47. We might have filled that up by now. So you got to stay within that 50-pound limit. You can bring 2 big ones, and we're going to bring 4, 2 apiece, and 2 of them pretty much are going to have gifts since it's been a while since we were there. And then we got our 2 carry-ons, and then we got our 2 personal items. So make sure you're within the weight limits. Make sure you show up at your first flight in plenty of time. So yeah, we're leaving about 2 p.m., hour and 19 flight, but we got to go to Denver. Denver can, I really don't like flying to Denver because it seems like something always goes wrong. They're running behind, not you. Maybe they can't pick you up in time because they're running behind, and then you get behind. But we have an hour and 19 layover, but we're going to check in everything from Omaha to Los Angeles. So we really shouldn't have any trouble if we're anywhere near on time with an hour and 19-minute layover. in Denver. Things can get hectic in Denver. Let me know if you've experienced that too. Kind of unsettling when you have to go through Denver. It has been our experience. Now, my wife wanted to check the luggage all the way through from Omaha to Manila. And I have a feeling that at one point she would have been able to do that. She was expecting to, but Philippine Airlines is not allowing that to happen. So that means, we take that hour and 19 layover and leave Denver at 4:07, and then get it Los Angeles LAX at 5:43. So actually that's not a layover. That's no, that is a layover. The flight time Omaha to Denver is an hour 50. The flight time from Denver to Los Angeles is 2:36. Those are nice. Those are nice short flights. And when you get to Los Angeles, if that's where you're going to leave, you need to get there a little earlier for stuff. So we've got a 4 hour and 22 hour layover in Los Angeles. That's fine. In fact, I asked about this because Denver is often late, it seems. I don't think I'm the only one. If we miss our flight from Denver at 2:48 p.m., can we still get to Los Angeles? Because the LA flight doesn't leave until 10:05. And actually, there is another flight, if we miss that one, that can get to Denver, from Denver to LAX at 7:10, which is about 3 hours, 2 hours and 55 minutes before we leave. That still might be good enough in case we run into trouble in Denver. So we got a nice 4 hour and 22 minute layover in Los Angeles. And at that point, 10:05 in the evening, we will leave to go to Manila. And the first time I went to the Philippines, it was 14 and a half hours. Right now, they're saying 15 hours and 25 minutes. And the 14 and a half hour flight was really rough. I wasn't prepared. I never done anything like that before. Didn't have back pain pills, pain pills. I just didn't know. I was excited to go. Make sure you bring your pain pills. You might need it. Also, on these long flights, you might see if you can have the travel agent or yourself, if you don't use a travel agent, sit somewhere where you would like to sit. So the LA flight leaves at 10:05. It's a monster, 15 hours, 25 minutes. Now, another thing you can do is you can purchase the internet from Philippine Airlines for that long flight. We've never done it. I told my wife, I'm going to do it this time. That's just a long time. We've seen a lot of the movies on those planes, the Airbus. They're great planes, by the way. They're massive. And travel has been good, but we've kind of seen a lot of the movies. They might have some new ones. It's been a couple of years. But for this, I'm going to pay for I have no idea what it's going to cost to use the internet. You get on the plane, apparently, is when you can start this. You get on the plane, put all your stuff away, and then you can go to Philippine Airlines. They might even make an announcement, the stewardess, when you can do this. And that's what I want to do to make this 15-hour, 25 flight go better. So, but another interesting thing was when my agent was booking the flights, we always sit on the end. I'm kind of taller. I like to get up and stand up. I got a bad back. And even sit close to the back where there's a restroom where I can get out easier. I can also just kind of loiter around there without having to, stand in the aisle and be really conspicuous. But they weren't letting anybody, they weren't seating anybody on the aisle. The big Airbus, they weren't letting anybody sit on the aisle. I think they said 3, 3, and 3, or 3, 4, and 3, or something. But they just blocked off all the aisle seats. Now we're going to check and see if, as we get close to the flight, she can put us back in there, because I'd like to sit on the aisle seat. So we'll see about that. So that gets us to, I know I haven't talked to the PSR yet, but I will. I'd like to get more people to come here. But that's a long flight, not much we can do. And we will arrive we're leaving on like the 19th, but it'll be the 21st of March before we actually get to Manila. 10:15 in the morning after that 15-hour, 25-minute flight. And then we have let's see, we have some kind, what kind of have for layover here? We have, I'm not sure if I can tell here, and I don't want to waste time with this, but we'll get there at 10:15 in the morning, Manila. In fact, that's not true. We're going to get there at 4:30 in the morning. I knew that didn't sound right. Remember, there's a 14-hour time zone difference from, well, from Nebraska to Manila. I don't know about Los Angeles. There's you have to deduct or add 2 hours on there somewhere. But the flight time, actual flight time, 15 hours and 25 minutes, will get us there on the 21st, which is a Monday after leaving on a Friday from Los Angeles, and get there 4:30 in the morning, bright and early in the morning. Then in Manila, we're going to have a 5 hour and 45-minute layover. 5 hour and 45-minute layover. Now, it's not what I want, but it's not a terrible thing because since they were not allowing us to check our bags from our first of four flights, Omaha, all the way to Davao, which would be really nice, we have to check them in, check them in again in Manila. So you need all the time you can get. So that's 5 hour and 45-minute layover, which, that's all we can do, just not much we can do. So we'll leave our flight from Manila 10:15 a.m. It's just a short flight, hour and 50 minutes for those final 599 miles to get from Manila to Davao. So we can be picked up from by family on a Monday, 12:05 in the afternoon, p.m., after leaving on a Friday night, a Saturday, the 19th, and getting there on Monday, the 21st. Too many numbers. Bottom line, it's a long time. And so then we just kind of have to retrace our steps coming back. The flight coming back, the big one is 2 hours shorter. That's normal. So instead of 15:25, that's 13:35. One of them is actually a little longer. Who knows about all that stuff? And we'll be getting back on, basically, we're gone for 3 weeks. And we'll be back 11:33 p.m. after a short flight from Denver, assuming everything in Denver is still okay. And we'll be getting our stuff and probably leaving sometime after midnight to drive home. And so that's the itinerary. Some of us need 4 flights. I hope nobody has to take more than that. I know you can if you maybe want to pay less and you're not in a big hurry to get there, but trust me, 4 flights, that's a lot to deal with. Now, no, Al, yes and no. We were able to select 2 seats, but the aisle wasn't one of them. They weren't, whatever reason. I don't know if it was COVID distance. They didn't want the stewardesses, flight attendants walking that close to people, or maybe there's been enough airline commotion that they just don't want to be near the people. I don't know. We're hoping they change that. But we picked what we could, the middle seat and then the window seat. We're going to try to get that aisle seat. So we had to pick something. I want to have some control over where we sit. But that's still not the end of it because we're still hoping to sit on the aisle. So we had to choose something, and I always like to. In fact, we have seat locations on all of these things. The first flight, Omaha to Denver, is going to be a small plane. We're in like row 7. Denver to LA, row 37. And then the big flight, row 47. And another Airbus to get to Manila, 32. So all of that's probably pretty much what it's always been. Now, there have been some hassles. So if you hadn't traveled before, we have 2 tickets, remember. We wanted to get it all in one ticket. Yes, that's more expensive. And by the way, this whole itinerary is, normally it'd cost us $3,600 total just to get to Manila. get an extra ticket. It's usually $150, $200 each to get to DeVal. It's all in all about 1,800 a piece. Maybe you get 14, 15, 1,500 per person is about the lowest we've been able to pay from Nebraska to Manila. And then you add on another couple hundred so to get to DeVal. So you're looking at about 3,600 normally. Well, this is going to be more like 4,400 plus. So that's more expensive. Nothing you can do about it. And we'll talk about the PCR testing. I highly recommend searching for a way to pay for it to get it done quicker, or your whole trip could be in jeopardy. That's a cost. The insurance we'll talk about is another cost. And so right away, it's going to be more expensive. But again, we want to go. My wife's been chomping at the bit. Tickets are Sobra Mahal. Well, Mahal is love, more or less, right? And also, I'm not sure what Sobra is. But these are expensive tickets. So if you kind of want to know what is a ballpark figure, probably per person, 1,500, 1,600 to get from the Midwest to to Manila. It all depends on how many flights you have to take, how far away you live to an airport that can head out and make that international flight. I don't really want to drive for 4 hours to save a flight. It has crossed my mind, but I'd rather not do that. So we have to check in twice. That's always done 24 hours before your first flight. So you got to make a note. When am I checking in? That lets the airline know that you haven't forgotten about it. Nothing's happened. You're going to be there. That way they don't have to wait for you and call out your name. You just check in, and that's what we need to do. It'll be on my calendar. It'll be other places, 1:58 on that Friday. Now, same thing, since it's another ticket, the LA to Manila, we're probably just going to check in for that when we arrive in LA, because we've got a, 5-hour and some, or a 4-hour and 22-minute layover. So we'll just check in before we leave Los Angeles, I think. And that'll be somewhere around 4:30 in the morning. Yeah, I'm not exactly sure. I think whenever we leave LA, we'll probably do that and say we're on our way to Manila. Check us in, make that official. So you get to a point when there's so many details you're looking at, and it gets very, very expensive. I appreciate the thumbs up. Just trying to share my experiences here. Then we'll go into the more frustrating thing. So you get your flights, get your seats, make sure you got what the baggage requirements are and what your limits are. When you have to check in, if you have 2 tickets, you got to check in before each one, and the same thing on the way back. You have to jot down the time. So I know we check in on the Thursday. We come back by 6:30 in the morning, and then the LA, and we got to check in for that. Before we get on, we have to make sure that we check in. And the very first time I went to the Philippines, I knew nothing. I was 2015, and I didn't check in, so I didn't know. I mean, I might have been told, but it was in one ear and out the other. I figured if I showed up, that would be good enough, and I showed up, and the plane had boarded, because when I showed up, I didn't know where to go, and I was told to stand in the wrong line, and by that time, they'd boarded before I could get a shuttle. So learn about your shuttles, because like in LA, I think you probably arrive somewhere, and then you got to get on a particular shuttle to get to a particular terminal. And so, try to line up all that stuff as best you can, so you don't waste any time. So another thing you have to do before you travel to the Philippines, this is a Philippines requirement. By the way, let me talk about these links over here to the right side in the chat box. The first one is where I got our travel insurance. I updated it today to make sure it was enough. That's called Travel X. Then you got one for Phil Star article and some things you need to know, and you may already know about about the trip. We've got another one. The 160B is the resolution that, well, it has a lot of stuff in there. It's like 7 pages, and there's a PDF there. You can look through all of that. The one that's on page 5, step 1C, talks about the wording for when you take the PCR test. Very important. And prior to the 160B resolution, it was very confusing. Also, there's a link to the One Health Pass. Everybody has to do that. You can register within 3 days of your initial point of embarkation, in our case, Omaha. But you're going to have to retrieve your, hopefully, negative COVID result to finish that One Health Pass. You can start it, put in whatever information. I don't know if they want you to like upload any screenshots or scans. I don't know. But you can put in whatever you can, but you can't complete that One Health Pass until you get your, hopefully, negative PCR test back. Then that will generate you a QR code to show anybody in the Philippines you have been vaccinated. So possible you have to upload a photo, which we have in our phones in case something goes wrong. Have a screenshot of, lay out your vaccination and booster. That might be 2 cards. Get it all on there. Make sure you have anything like that, on your phone as well, just to be safe. So, that's what we'll be able to do. That's one code. But Davao City, where we're going, they also require a separate QR code, which the link there is for the, it's one of those links here. It's called Safe Davao. Anyway, it's on there. And I see I might have put One Health Pass on here twice. And I apologize if I did. I was in a hurry. And if it's not on there, it'll be in the description box when I'm done. It's called Safe-Davao. Safe-Davao. If you're going to Davao City, you also need to get the QR code that goes with that, ostensibly to track you around Davao. So if you don't have that, not getting into Davao. You got to have the QR code from One Health Pass, and you must have, if you're going to Davao City, the QR code from the Safe-Davao website. My wife has already done that, so that's one less thing on our minds. So it'll be in the description if I didn't put it there. Safe-Davao. So as far as that PCR test, initially people were saying, well, you got to get it within 48 hours of leaving the country. Sounds simple enough? Well, it's not. What does leaving the country mean? Does it mean, in our case, LAX, because that's a flight that literally leaves the country? Or, as some might say, well, we got Omaha, Denver, LAX. Some people have other similar situations. When are they supposed to get this PCR? You have to count backwards 48 hours, and that includes time zone. If that's going to be an issue, then you have to include the actual time, from where you're leaving, and the time in the city you're going to get it, in case you're driving to another city to get the test, or your last flight out goes from another one. But anyway, that's the way it was, and it was like, well, we're never going to get this result back in time. We'll have to test on a Friday. Then on the 3rd of February, they came out with this resolution 160B, which said something like, you test from the first port of embarkation of continuous flights. So in other words, Omaha, Denver, LA, those are continuous flights. So our 48-hour countdown starts from back of 2 p.m. on the day that we leave Omaha. Not from Denver, not from Los Angeles. That really would cut into our time. It comes from before your first flight. If you aren't getting off, leaving the airport, if you're just sitting there waiting out your whatever they call that, the waiting period, layover. And so we know when we have to test. So that's the first thing you want to find out about this PCR. When do I have to get it tested? Because you don't want to test so late that you can't get it back in time. Now, speaking of that, you need a RT-PCR, that stands for reverse transcription PCR. And all the pharmacies and people I've talked to said that a PCR test is a PCR test. But they will also tell you the PCR test, RT-PCR test, takes 2 to 4 days, depending on who you talk to. They might come out and say 2 to 3 days, or they might say 48 to 70, 72 hours. And then you're going to say, well, wait a minute. If it's more than like 44, I'm not going to be able to get on that first plane. What are we going to do? Well, I was asking people in town, can I pay for the test? Can I pay for the test? We got to have this PCR back in time. There's no trip. Everybody here in town said, we don't have anybody that does it in an hour. We used to, but now we don't. So I called around, and I did find out there's one place that we can go and get it back within an hour. So that's what we're going to do. Oh, there's a catch. All the tests are the same, but I think if you want them to get straight to yours, then in our case, we'll be paying $225 per person for the rapid PCR. They're all the same, not the antigen, don't do that. The PCRs are the same. If you want to pay, which I think you probably have to, you can pay for it and get it back soon enough and get that thing out of your hair. And now that's one less thing to be concerned about. My Philippines interest. Why do I need a psychologist? Please let me know. Now let me fill around here. It's been a while. Maybe I can get rid of this jackass. Trying to be nice here. Okay, so James Adventures Near and Far Philippines. Work here ends June 12th. My plan, June 20th, wait and see how prices change and protocols by April. Then I'll book at any cost. Well, and that's James' plan. Thank you for sharing that comment. Everybody, depending on their situation, and yes, getting time off of work is important. I mean, if you end up saying to your employer, here's our plan, and it got changed, here's our plan. Well, something came up. Eventually, they might just say, we're not going to give it to you. You know, you can't make up your mind. So you do want to be sure that's only fair for your employer to make sure the needs of the department are met. And, you know, June, I hope the time goes by fast for you, James. We have a reason we want to be there at a wedding. And I think it's very important to my wife. I'd like to be there too, quite frankly. And I think that's why we're such a stickler on this time period. Keep in mind, we did want to go in December last year. So we've waited, and I appreciate that. I'm going to have to put Philippines interest in timeout, whatever that is. So anyway, we have to remove his comment as well, if I can. Oh, you say you're retired and not leaving. Oh, not leaving the Philippines. Okay. So you probably have to deal with what to do with this return ticket and all of that stuff. Everybody's, you know, got things to deal with these trips. It is probably the most difficult one of all of the trips we've taken so far to go to the Philippines and plan for. So the PCR, we're going to pay for it, $225 per person to get it back in an hour. And I think you just have to, because that place is not going to guarantee you 48 hours, 44 hours. They're not going to guarantee you anything. They just can't. A lot of times, probably the majority of the time, when you go somewhere to a clinic or a pharmacy and get that PCR test, the reason it takes so long is they wait till about 5 o'clock at night. They put all of them in a a white bag, I'm told, all the samples, and then they deliver them somewhere, probably another city, to a lab that can test them. Now, I've been vaccinated, I've been boosted. A few weeks ago, I got COVID. So we had my wife test for COVID at a different place that could get her in with her work schedule. And 6 days later, we hadn't heard back. So I called them and said, what is her result? We kind of like to know. We did this 6 days ago. And they said, well, the test was invalidated. So that's it. We just, there's no result. But they could have called us and said, something happened to your sample. We'll have to do it over. You'll have to do it over. And then we could have, but those things you want to eliminate, an invalid test. You want to eliminate not having enough people to do the test. This is why they don't know how long it's going to take for you to get it back. It depends on the travel. If the travel is bad, it gets there slower. If somebody gets in an accident, stalled, people don't call in from work, they're sniffling, maybe they think they have COVID, they don't go to work, and they have a short staff, which is common. And so you're not going to get it back right away. So get that fast test, and then you are able to be on your way. Let's see if that helps. Have to deal with my Philippines interest. I know it sounds like Frank Battaglia, but I don't think that's Frank Battaglia. LAX and SFO, San Francisco, I assume, doing return in 2 hours test. Okay, at airports. That's another thing. If you're at the airport, you can probably do that. And that's what you want to do. If you get there ahead of time, amply ahead of time, you can do your test in the airport. Or maybe you could go to the airport and do it one day, get your result, and if it's negative, go back and fly the next day. I don't know how you're going to do that. But we have to drive about 45 miles, and it's no big deal, and we'll pay for it. We'll get it back. Some people are saying they're going to the airport and getting it for free. This rapid PSR, which qualifies to go in the Philippines for free. That's great. If you have to pay for it, I think you have to pay for it to guarantee that you're going to get on there. So that's one thing. The timing of it, 48 hours before your first point of embarkation, first of your flights to get to the departure flight from the country. It goes back from your very first starting point. And so I would pay for the PCR test to get it done faster. As far as insurance, which is a big deal, when we went to get the insurance with the travel agent, I said, oh, by the way, they just came up with a new rule, $35,000 travel insurance. So that's what I asked for. I said, we got to have that. Well, somehow there was a misunderstanding. And when I checked the email with the copies of the attachments, it said 15,000. Well, 15,000 is far short of 35,000. So I called up this company, Travelex Insurance Services, Travelex. It's, I think, the first link up there. And we kind of canceled the first one, so that'll be a credit on the credit card. And then we'll be billed $322 for both of us for this insurance. And since you don't really get to pick your amount of coverage, you pick the level that they have. We can get 50,000 actually for both of us, even though my wife doesn't need it because she's a Filipino. But we'll have 50,000, so that'll get us in there. So for 322 for the both of us. So another thing to get done. If you don't know where you're going to go, please consider Travelex, and it's the Travel Select plan. That's the one that has enough insurance. And by the way, I think you might end up confusing some of these places if you say, I got to have COVID-19 insurance, because they don't have COVID-19 insurance. It's just travel medical insurance, or what's the word? Can't think of the word. It's medical insurance. Something comes up, then It's illness, it's medical insurance, COVID, bubonic plague, whatever is all covered under that. So it's not likely to be something that says, I have COVID-19 insurance, let me in the Philippines. It will be medical insurance or emergency medical. That's the word I was looking for. And that will get you into the Philippines. So if you have to go to PAL or wherever, make sure it's crystal clear you have $35,000 worth of coverage in the Philippines, even though I think that would probably be enough for a heart transplant. That's what they are saying you have to get. So, keep trying and looking around for that health insurance. James is going to Kidapawan City, Mindanao. Did I do that right? Kidapawan. Okay, you're flying a 66 with 144 for insurance. That's excellent. If I was to go separately from my wife, then instead of 322, it was going to be 217, 217. So that's not bad at all. So you got a great price, and just make sure it really says clearly that your medical is definitely 35,000 or more. Once I read that, because I didn't have a good feeling about it, I found out, nope, we didn't pay for enough, even though I said that's what we needed. So anyway, some kind of misunderstanding there. So know when to take the PCR test. Make sure you pay for it, or go to the airport and see if maybe you won't have to pay for it, but they'll get it back quicker. Even if you have to drive away, so what? The main thing is that you're going to go to bed before your trip knowing that you're going to have that result back. In fact, you should already have it by then if you pay for it. Al, that's a good question because of what I'm going to say next. Our trip, is 3 weeks. That's what we want to go for. My wife has to be back for work. She's also going to school. She's a busy little woman. And if we test positive coming back, because that affects the length of your trip, you may go there for X amount of time. The U.S. government, and it's on one of the links there. U.S. government says you take the 24-hour antigen test. Now that's fine, so somewhere in Davao we'll have to find a place to do that. But if it's a false positive, then what? You're not going to have time to get a PCR because they would have to do it and get it done fast. And I don't know where that would be right now. Well, actually, you can't do that. I take that back. It doesn't matter. The U.S. government says it's a rapid test. So I suppose if you got a positive and you felt fine and it's your antigen test, I suppose you would just say, can we do another one? There is a small charge for it. It's probably not more than $10 or $12. And then you probably just do another one if you don't trust that one until you can get a negative, because I think those antigen tests are only 85% accurate. PCRs are supposedly 99% accurate. You can't take the antigen test to get out of the United States in the Philippines, and you cannot take the PCR to get out of the Philippines into the United States. It has to be PCR to get into the Philippines, and it has to be, you can see it for yourself there, antigen test 24 hours to get out of the Philippines back into the United States. So be prepared. If you really do get a positive, you will be quarantining, I assume, with your spouse for 10 days. So that would lengthen the trip by 10 days. Al, 10 days. Nothing we can do about that. James says, Filipina and kids in the air now, fly from Manila to Davao. Hopefully they have their Safe Davao QR code, then on to Kidapawan, then 20 minutes up to the mountain to Pasig and real province life. Yes, we live out in the jungle too, James, so it'll be nice to be there again. Hopefully everything works out. Hopefully we get everything planned out. So I did ask the insurance, flight insurance, which is the health insurance, flight insurance, and they said that we do have coverage for it's like uh, it's like $250 per day of health, not health, hotel reimbursement. So we would have, the way it turns out, like $4,000 as part of this Travel X insurance to use. Let's say we didn't want to go back in the house and we want to stay in a nice hotel in Davao. We could do that up to like, yeah, we could probably spend $300 a night in the hotel, and then you'd 60 meals, $15. It's about 900. So we could, for that $4,000, we could easily stay in a really, really, really nice hotel and get the food if we had to quarantine, if we got a positive antigen test. So we would feel better about that. And that comes with that Travel X insurance. And I remember asking them, if one of us is positive, but the other doesn't, does that give the coverage to both of us? Because we both have, the cost for quarantining. And so, but some insurances will say, well, no, if you're the one that has COVID, your spouse doesn't have COVID. I know you're going to stay together, but we're not going to cover them. Pretty sure this one does, unless there was a misunderstanding. I'm pretty sure they said they are a close contact, and yes, they would be covered if one of you got COVID. So that was nice to know. I would be interested in knowing if there are more people here, what health insurance, travel health insurance, they were going to use, because I think other people are still looking to know what that would be. James says 6 years. I can't get rid of her now. Well, we're over 6 years, just a little bit, James. So those are years where we've really gotten to know each other better, and I've gotten a much better appreciation of the Philippines and the culture, what a Filipina has to go through living here, and the adjustments she has to make. And I believe there are adjustments the foreigner has to make. So with Love Beyond the Sea, which I've had for almost 4 years now, started on Valentine's Day of 2015. So we're probably a week away from 4 years. So maybe now with the Philippines opening, more people will be searching for some information on relationships with Filipinas. So I'm hoping that that will help this channel. So those are the big things. Some other things, just don't forget to go over your medications, to make sure that you not only have enough medication for the planned time you plan on spending there, but also if you do have a quarantine, you might as well plan for this 10 more days. So make sure you have your meds for the trip plus the quarantine. If you're going to run out of prescriptions while you're there, you'll have to ask your doctor, or at least your pharmacy first, to see if your doctor will write you the prescription to refill it earlier, because you may be gone for 5 weeks. Who knows, maybe more. So make sure you take care of your medications. You may have to order them early, or you may have to get an exemption to order early. But let's say like we got blood pressure medication I need. I could probably get it in the Philippines, but look, I want to get it here, make sure it's the same thing. Also, doctor appointments, depending on your age and how often you go to the doctor and how regular it is. Make sure you get those out of the way. Make sure they understand that you're not going to be available. You need to look at your calendar everywhere that you're going to go. Make sure that your doctor's appointments are taken care of. Make sure you're going to have all your meds. Another thing would be bills to pay while you're gone. Somehow you need to have a system worked out. So if you're gone for 3 weeks, 4 weeks, 5 weeks, you're in the United States or wherever, that your bills get paid. So don't forget about that. You might want to have international on your phone. I think my wife said we can't do that. She switched to Verizon. When I had Sprint, yeah, I could buy an hour or whatever I thought I might need on an emergency basis to call from the Philippines, call my mother, call my travel agent, something like that. Um, but I think she said with Verizon, we can't. So we'll have to communicate through Facebook or another person through Facebook. There's going to have to be some way I can communicate. We'll have to think about that. Those are just some other things you want to think about. Um, James says, just go with it. Bahala and the best life no one could ever imagine. Just leave it all behind you. Well, as I get older, James, I'm trying to mellow out. It's not easy because I do want to make sure we got all these details are covered and things are going right. And been very frustrating. It's been the most frustrating trip I've ever been involved with planning. And we're not leaving for another 5 weeks or so, but at least I feel like I've got a handle on it. Now I just have to make sure we do what we have to do, what we know we have to do at the right time. And so I listed some of those earlier in this live stream. It's more complicated, and I'm all for looking at these other vloggers' channels. Just make sure that you have to be sure of the information because you're the one that's going to be responsible. There is some information out there that is not accurate. And so I hope that I have been able to be helpful here. If anybody has, you know, the two people that are here have any comments to make before I go, those are just the things that I covered. Make sure you got your important phone numbers and also think what could happen if something goes wrong. You know, what are your contingencies? What if you miss a flight here? What if you do have to go in quarantine? I would just assume you're going to quarantine. You don't want that to happen, but you have to be prepared in case it does happen. So, yeah, Al, thank you for being here. I don't I haven't done many lives lately because I figured there really hasn't been any reason to. Um, the traffic here on YouTube has been extremely low. I started a TikTok channel right away, and right away I'm getting 50 to 200 times more views than I am on YouTube, just like that. I'm getting a lot of comments, which keeps me busy. I'm getting a lot of likes. I'm getting everything on TikTok in a month that I, you know, haven't been getting after 4 years on YouTube. So I still want to have a YouTube channel. The TikTok videos are limited to less than 3 minutes. And so I am putting those on this channel. In time, I will be uploading more longer videos to YouTube that I can't load on TikTok, but I want to wait for more people to come around to finding the channel because I've learned you can put out 3 videos a week or 7 or 10 videos a week, and it's just not going to matter. There's no simple formula. You know, I can get 8 views on a YouTube video and get 3,000 on TikTok and 30, 40, 50, 100 comments. So that's been really nice. But I'd like to see it do better here on YouTube. Thanks, Al. I appreciate that. I'm hoping that somehow TikTok can drive to YouTube. I've got like 370 topics left to do. I've got 950 videos. I've got 370 more topics. I've written 70 of them. I try to do them when I can. But right now, I'm not in a big hurry to put them on here if only 8 or 10 or 12 or 14 people are going to see it. So we can put the TikTok videos on there. But I do hope to be around a long time, Lord willing, doing this. But that we'll just have to see how it goes. Shane says 737 days COVID free. Can you think I'm Superman? You're naturally immune. I hope so. I hope so, James. I got boosted Pfizer, and then I got, the booster, and then I got COVID like a month after I got the booster. I don't think I have it anymore. I haven't retested since we're going to do it before we go. I hope my wife doesn't get it. She's been vaccinated fully. She's got the booster, and she doesn't show any signs of having it. But good for you. I hope you don't get it again. I don't even know if that's possible. Nothing would surprise me because I think I have to be careful even talking about this topic because it could end up, where they don't let anybody see the video. I did a TikTok video where I mentioned a certain word that is a long word. It starts with I and it has to do with going from one country to another. And it was about, helping your Filipina adjust after and that long word that starts with I. And instead of getting 500 or a few thousand views, it still has 0. So that means that TikTok doesn't like that word and they don't like using it in hashtags. So that takes care of that. So I'm going to try not to even talk about certain things here because it just makes it harder for your channel to get any views. But I hope you are immune. I hope I'm immune. So then the only slight concern, is my wife. She's younger. Could she still get COVID? Absolutely. There I go with that word again. I should not do that. So anyway, there you have our itinerary. Your mileage, no pun intended, may vary for your itinerary, but try to stay as organized as you can. And remember, you're ultimately responsible, no matter what the travel agent told you, no matter what you read somebody on YouTube, what they said, you're ultimately responsible. So, kind of learn to question everything, make sure it's right. Because if you're like us, you got 8 different pieces of luggage. If I added up the weight, it'd probably be 300 pounds worth of stuff. You don't want to haul it back and then make your new plans. And, you know, I'm not expecting the Philippines to shut this down, but, if you want to go later in the year, that's understandable. Absolutely. But you go through another cold season in November, December, another variant pops up, and then they might just go back and change the rules a little bit. So I know there's wisdom in waiting, absolutely. But right now, I don't see them changing anything this soon because they're opening it up. I think they have to just let it start. Now, maybe in 3 or 4 or 5 months, they might change, but it's going to be the summer season. There's not going to be cold season, so probably not going to have any changes there. I would be mostly concerned if anyone is trying to go later in the winter, for example. You might get more colds and flus. You get mistaken for the C word, and then that might make it hard for you to travel. So we've talked for about an hour. I appreciate everybody being here, except for my Philippines interest. I don't think that is Frank Battaglia. If it is, shame on Frank, but I don't think it is. Frank has had a very low profile since whatever happened. I used to watch my Philippines interests, but I don't know if that's Frank. I liked Frank's channel. A lot of people, I don't know, they have something against him, but those are the old days of Philippines vloggers. And with things opening up again, maybe there will be an introduction of a new Fab Five of Philippines vloggers. So we all have our favorites. So I'm finally going to break away and do something else today. I wanted to share you that information. Please avail yourself of those links. And hopefully this will make some people feel better about going to the Philippines. It's been a couple years since we've been there. And I'm looking forward to it. The first time I ever went, I said this to my wife's mother. Honestly, I'm not coming back. It's too long. My back is killing me, and it was. But I've been there like 3 times since, and now we're planning on going again. So I think I've done a better job of learning how to adapt to the long flights instead of sitting there and grousing and whining and complaining because of TSA or this or that, or having them make me throw away the water that I just bought because there could be some explosive in it. You just have to learn to grin and bear it. You're going to go on any flight, but probably especially international flights. Yes, James, that reminds me of something else. Helpful tip. James adventures near and far Philippines says, don't cough while boarding the plane. Well, I do cough a lot. And this has been this way for years. The doctors say, and they've investigated me, all kinds of tests and scans, and they say it's just because I'm older and there's a nerve, in your throat that gets irritated. And so basically, I just try not, if I sound like I'm talking and holding my breath, I'm just trying not to talk too loud, because the louder I talk, the more likely I am to cough. But absolutely, and this is serious, you do not want to go there and raise some suspicion. That's a good tip. I like that. It's practical. It's useful. Don't go hacking and coughing there. Do whatever you can to hold it in. And for some of us, we just cough more. So that's true. But also, I want to say, James, when you go there, you're supposed to self-monitor your symptoms. So let's say we get to Manila, we get to Davao. That's our ultimate destination. Here's the key. I think the wording says something like, if you think, no, they say if you have COVID symptoms, then you should go to the LGU, local government unit, and report. Well, I'm not going to tell anybody what to do, but if you've gone through all the anxiety you've gone through to get to the Philippines, and you do develop a sniffle, are you going to say, hey, here I am, I just I've been sneezing and sore throat? I suppose technically you're supposed to, but you know what? You might have a cold. And I had a dentist. She was old enough to retire. And she said that these tests are not good. She said they can't distinguish accurately between a cold and COVID, the other C word. And so that doesn't exactly give you any confidence to say, well, maybe I have a cold. I'll just go and check in. They might just say, aha, quarantine. So I think people are going to think twice after all they've been through. As long as it's taken them to be able to go to the Philippines again, I think they'll think twice about reporting some symptoms that, while they may be, symptoms of that virus, it could be a cold. So how do you know? I wouldn't want to incriminate myself unnecessarily. I'll say that much. But yeah, keep your coughing down, or don't let anybody see you cough, because they might, who knows? You just have to be careful. So I'm going to be going. Thank you for the few of you that were here tonight, except for, who was it? My Philippines Interest. And thank you for your comments. Hope you've learned something. If you're going, or whoever sees this later is going, I hope this is helpful, and I hope you have a wonderful time. As long as it's been to go to the Philippines, it's going to go real fast. When we've gone the first week, it seems like it goes fairly slow. It's like, we've been here a week, huh? We've got 2 more weeks. But every time, the last 2 weeks has just flown by, and then it's all over. So no matter how long you're staying, no matter how long you're waiting, it's going to go fast. Be excited about the opportunity to go to the Philippines. Those of you going to see a fiance, or some people are even going to go see their own family, I'm very happy for you. We're going to take the plunge. Not immediately, like some people have. That's fine too. I'm interested in learning about their experiences. But these are our plans. I think we got pretty much everything covered. Hopefully this will help some of you. So no telling when I'll do another live stream. I may do another longer video up here soon, one of these times. That will kind of depend on how the overall channel is going. Yeah, Al says especially fast when you know you have to leave your girlfriend behind. Well, then you want to make the most of your time. We're going to go stay in our house, which is on the channel here, Love Beyond the Sea. And it'll be a second time staying in the house. We'll rent a car. It's another big expense. My wife drives. She knows how to drive here. She knows how to drive in the Philippines. She knows how to drive well in the dark in the Philippines, and it is dark there. Not as many lights as it is here. I don't trust myself driving there, so we'll get a car. We'll want to get around. Mostly we want to see the family. I want to go there so I can make some videos and The last time I was there was January of 2020. That was the high point of Love Beyond the Sea, as far as subscribers that month and views per day, or actually they do it views every 48 hours. That was the high point. That was January 2020. It's been all downhill since then. So I've been persevering, and maybe this next time out to the Philippines will help revive the YouTube channel again. But thanks everybody for being here. Look forward to another video or live stream in the future here on Love Beyond the Sea.